birthday today. So it's my youngest son's 11th birthday. So happy birthday, Robert. I hope you're watching right now. So what we have here today, obviously we are a manufacturing facility, and we're going to go in, we're going to see these awesome robots that are moving the feed and stacking the feed. But I tell everybody, don't look yet. All right, we got to cover some other information first, because making feed doesn't start in here with all the equipment. Making feed starts long before any of the ingredients ever arrive here. So if you look out here, we've got a scale out on the ground. So that's that raised platform right above the blacktop there. And that's where the truck drivers come first thing in the morning. Our ingredients are here waiting on us, and they pull up onto that scale. So that truck driver then comes into the office, visits with one of our team in the office there, one of the ladies, and they bring in some paperwork. What kind of paperwork would they have? Well, one, they have to fill out paperwork for us. Who are you? How do we get a hold of you? Who are you working for? How do we get a hold of them? What ingredient have you brought? How did you clean your truck out before you got here? What did you haul last? Where did you pick it up? Where did you deliver it? So that's very crucial information. Simply put, we won't accept any deliveries of ingredients if they hauled something harmful to a horse prior to this. So we make sure those trucks have been cleaned out properly. They must have been washed out before they came, no matter what they were hauling last. And they can only haul ingredients that would go towards equine feeds. So if they hauled coal, we're not going to accept the load. If they hauled road salt, something harmful to a horse, we're not going to accept those loads. We don't have to worry about it. We have long-standing relationships with our suppliers, and they know not to send trucks in here that would have something harmful in them. They know that we need to take care of that and protect the end user, protect the horses, and so that's something we have with our long-standing relationships with the suppliers. Another note on those suppliers, our ingredients, that's been a big question. Oh my gosh, do we need to stock up on horse feed? No, we're going to keep making horse feed. Horse feed is essential. We have to keep feeding these animals. So we're going to keep making the feed. The ingredients keep coming to us. You don't have to stock up and hoard the feed. And our ingredients come from America, even down to our bags, made in the USA. We don't want to be waiting on bags to get off a boat coming overseas, and they're stuck in a port somewhere or they're quarantined. So we have made in the USA bags, made in the USA, grown in the USA ingredients, and that's very important. So where do those ingredients come from? Well, the corn, for example, all the corn we use comes from a farmer up in Indiana. He grows all of it, he stores all of it, he only brings us current crop year, and we've had a long-standing relationship with this gentleman. He knows exactly what we need. He's able to handle all of our needs and bring it to us as we need it. All the oats come from one supplier out west, all the alfalfa comes from one supplier in Ohio, and it's like that for every ingredient. A single supplier. It's the absolute best in quality control. It's the absolute best in knowing that we're going to receive exactly what we want for every single load of feed. So those suppliers, when they send the trucks in, the quality control doesn't start when they get here. It's that relationship going back decades before they get here, and they know exactly what to bring us. Now, they still bring a nutrient analysis with them. We still do spot checks all throughout our system, pulling ingredients, sending them for testing, making sure what's on the paper is the same as what we've accounted for in all of our formulations, and it makes sure that we have a very consistent, accurate end product for the horses. So we got a truck coming up on the scale right now, so pretty simple how it works, but you'll get to see it. Now you can see the two sort of funnels underneath that trailer. That's called a hopper bottom, and we're actually going to, when he pulls around to unload, he'll actually crank those open one at a time, where they'll drop into a pit in the floor to be unloaded. So if you ever wondered how a semi got unloaded, well, that's one way that they do that. So those doors will crank open. So that gentleman's going to come in, fill out the required paperwork, make sure the load's approved, the ingredients improved, before he pulls around the building to unload the ingredient. All right, now as we walk through here, I always tell our live tours, don't get distracted by the robots. Don't look at the pretty lights just yet. I don't want you to see those yet. We're going to get to them, I promise. But we're going to do this one step at a time, from receiving the ingredients and now over to where we're going to store it in batches. So follow me, and we're going to work our way to the production office. All right, we've made our way into the production office. Cory loves having tours in here. He's the very talkative type. He usually takes over the tours from me at this time, and I have to really push him away and hold him off so he doesn't distract everybody and get lost in a bunch of side stories. If y'all know Cory, you know that usually he disappears whenever I'm giving tours. He's not the guy that likes to, he doesn't necessarily like to have a camera in his face, I believe. So this is our production office. Cory's our production manager. Cory, you've been here 25 years. We just celebrated earlier this year, actually. That's right. So 25 years Cory's been with Hallway Feeds. And it's changed a little bit since Cory started in here in the production office. Completely automated at this point. Looks a little bit more like NASA than maybe a feed mill, a lot of people would think. Very high tech. It assures that we can make the best horse feed every single time. I tell people all the time, consistency. It's important for raising children, and it's important for horses. And it's the same thing with the horse feed. Consistency is very important. So we're going to look at the large TV screen because it actually cycles through what's on the smaller screens that Cory's working off of. But the good news is I can change the TV screen without messing Cory up. We can flip through his screens. So this software was installed about 5 years ago, complete automation here. And Jared Pendleton, who's our Director of Technology and Innovation, actually worked with the company that designs this software to make sure it matched exactly our feed mill. So this was put together to match every bin we have, every inventory management, every elevator, leg, anything that moves the ingredients. It is all exactly as it should be in this, thanks to Jared's work with Beta Raven putting all this together. Completely customized to Hallway Feeds. So what we have, you saw the truck that pulled around front, and he's actually going to pull around the back probably before we get out of here, and he's going to pull over this truck pit that's out back. And after he comes in and checks with Cory, who sets up what he's receiving and where it belongs, which you can tell it's turned on by the green lines. There it is. He's turned it on right now because he knows he's getting ready to receive an ingredient. You'll be able to follow the ingredient as it moves through the system. So that truck will pull over the pit after he's been improved inside in the office, and Cory sets it up. It'll actually drop down into the ground, and there's a conveyor that will drag that ingredient inside, and it'll go up in this tall receiving elevator, receiving leg. It's the highest point on our feed mill. So if you ever driven by Hallway Feeds and saw the very highest point, and if you come by during the Christmas season, Advent leading up, you'll notice the big star on top. That's on that receiving leg right there at the very tip top. So when it goes up to there, there's buckets on that conveyor on this. It scoops up the ingredient, takes it to the very top, and when it flips over, it pours into a pipe that drops it into a distributor. So that's what these round discs are called. These are distributors. So inside, the mechanism will turn to drop it down the correct pipe depending on where it needs to go. So as you've come up to the mill, if you've driven or been here before, there's very large ingredient bins outside. Well, those are these bins, and those are the bins that we need to keep a lot of those ingredients around. Oats, corn, some wheat products, some soybean products, beet pulp. Some of those are kept in very large bins because we go through so much of that making horse feeds. And then under this F distributor, all of these numbered bins here are actually directly over our head right now, and those are the ingredients that we're using to make every single batch of feed. So some of those are pulled from outside, but some of them go directly into the bins above us, maybe like the calcium, alfalfa meal, different types of corn, different ingredients will go into all those bins right there. Soy hull pellets, some of the mixer pellets that we make and then put in those bins, the protein, vitamins, and minerals put together into a small pellet and then put in the bin as an ingredient for when we go to make the feed. So again, the truck pulls in, the ingredient is brought inside, goes way up in that receiving leg, drops down into the C distributor, drops down to the F distributor. In this case, it looks like we're receiving a version of soybean.
Soybean meal.
Soybean meal, so 48% soybean meal is going to be received in the truck. And he's actually out there right now unloading. He's cranking it down into the truck. So that's how we receive the ingredients. That's how we store them. So that's just the storage screen. When you see F distributor or K or some of these bins on the next screens, they're not duplicates. It's just because this is about filling them, and then on the next screen it'll be actually about pulling out of that bin to use those ingredients to mix the feed. So we've received the ingredients, and so now we're going to batch the ingredients. We're actually going to make the feed. So again, those numbers that I showed you on that first screen, 1 through 26, and then a few other bins here under the F distributor, those are the macro ingredients. Those are the ingredients we use in very large volumes to make every batch of feed. Now, you see we have some micro scales over here, and those are the ingredients that we only use a very little bit of to make each batch of feed. So it might be extra vitamin E, might be extra selenium, or maybe an A, D, and E mix. It would be salt. You could use 10, 15, 20, 50 pounds of salt depending on the feed you're making. Those are going to be held in the micro scales. Well, just like it shows on this screen here, those micro scales and the major scale both fall into the mixer at the same time. So it's green, it's actually waiting. The mixer is turned on, but it's currently waiting to receive the handad, these micro scales. So once all the major ingredients have been weighed out, once all the micro ingredients have been weighed out, and they fall into that 4-ton mixer in the floor, it's going to go in there and just get completely mixed up. So it goes in there for about 90 seconds.
Yes.
About 90, depending on the product, it'll vary. And that's at the point where if there's any oil on the feed, that's when the oil will get added to the mix right then. We don't put molasses on. If it's a textured feed, you don't put molasses on, and I always make this comment. There's a saying, slow as molasses, and it's real. So you don't put molasses on until the very last step. So I'll show you about where that happens. You can't quite see it because we're not going to climb up there with a camera and a bunch of people, but we'll show you about where it happens right before it goes in the bag. So whether we're making a pelleted feed or a textured feed, no molasses added here, that's going to happen a little later on. So after it's mixed, it drops out, it's taken up a different elevator to move it to where it needs to go. So currently the feed that he's moving right now, again, if you follow those lines, he's making our most popular broodmare full weanling product. It's called Staminotes, and he's putting that into a bin right now. So these are the bins then that we're going to be making pelleted feeds out of, and then there's also bins that will actually be over the textured feed line that we bag the textured feed out of. Textured feeds, once they leave the mixer, they're ready to go. They're ready to go to the bag, except for the molasses. The pelleted products, though, have to go through a pelleting process, because when they're in the mixer, it looks like all the dry ingredients when you make a cake. It's all very powdery and light, so we have to form them into the pellet to make them usable. So this would be the pelleting system. So again, after it leaves the mixer, it goes into one of these bins, 33 through 36, and it waits until Cory is ready to turn it into a pellet. So when he opens it up and tells it to go, it's going to drop down into this conditioner, which depending on the product is going to use steam to actually activate the binding agent that's in there. And so through that conditioner that's about 8 foot long, there's a shaft with a lot of beaters on the edge of it. The steam is introduced, it beats it all up, mixes it up very quickly, and then it falls into the front of this pellet mill. So that pellet mills, I always give people the example of playing with Play-Doh as a kid. You would always take the Play-Doh, and put it into almost a mold, and then you'd had a plunger you would push, and if it was a star shape or a circle or a square, that's how the Play-Doh came out. It's kind of what we're doing here with the pellet mill. So after that conditioner does its job with this steam and activates the binding agent, well, it falls into the front of the die on the pellet mill. So the die is very large. It's about 6 or 8 inches wide and has lots of holes in it. So it's spinning around inside the pellet mill here. And inside that die, there's 2 small rollers. And so that powdery mix, which isn't as powdery anymore because of the addition of the steam, falls into there, and the rollers push it out through the die. It just literally shoves it out, and that's how we have the shape of the pellets. And we make 2 different size pellets. We make an 1/8 inch pellet and a 1/2 inch pellet. I've asked them, you know, if it is like the Play-Doh, well, how come we haven't done a horseshoe or a star or, you know, something fun? I think that'd be great for the pony clubbers. Might love the different shapes. I really can't get Cory behind the idea. I'm not sure what to do to get him on board here. Maybe if all of you all would write letters to Cory, send him an email, maybe we could get him on board with getting a little different shape in there instead of just the circles. We could make it more fun. So once it's pushed through that die, when it's long enough, there's a blade that cuts it off at the appropriate length, and it actually falls into this cooler. Well, why in a cooler? Well, we've added steam. It's depending on the product, 150, 160, 170 degrees. You actually have to cool it out. If you put it directly into the bag, you could have trouble with the feed later. So we drop it into the cooler. It literally just blows cool air through those pellets, and you can tell when it leaves there, it's almost the exact same as the ambient temperature. It's coming out just 4 degrees warmer than the ambient temperature. So that's perfect. It's doing its job exactly as designed. So it comes out of there, takes another ride way up top, and goes over a bit of a sifting, a cleaner. So we're separating any broken or small or powdery pieces away from the good pellets. So the good pellets fall all the way to the end, and they go to be bagged. Any of the small pellets or powder get a chance to run again, and if they make it to the end, then it's probably just not going to have a chance to go. So it'll just get one more chance to come through before it goes to the bag. So we actually have 2 different pellet lines, as I said. One of them makes a small pellet, one of them makes the larger pellet we call a Q. And that's how we actually batch the feed and put the feeds together in here. Cory, did I make anything up, or was it all pretty accurate?
Pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate. All right. So we're going to move on out of here. Let Cory get back to his work. Thanks, Cory.
Thank you.
No questions? Don't forget, if you have any questions, just feel free to send them in online on the Facebook. Make a comment, and we'll answer them live for you as we go. So now we're back out to the fun part. This is what everybody wants to see, right? The robots. These are what are a lot of fun to see. So if you look up real quick, there's a stainless steel hopper up top. Behind that hopper is a conveyor, and right at the end of that conveyor, that's where the molasses is added on to the textured product. So what we're standing in front of is just for bagging textured feeds. This is not the pelleted line. It's off on the back side. It's hard to get to with a group, so we'll show you from a distance, but we're not actually going to go back there. So if you look up at this screen right here, that is the moment, right as the molasses is added, it's right before it drops onto that conveyor right there. And we've turned it so we can see it today. It usually is turned the other way so that our gentleman running the textured line can actually watch it and keep an eye on the progress. So the molasses is added, it's mixed up quickly, comes up the conveyor and into that hopper. From there, we actually have 2 scales. Well, why do we have 2 scales? Well, remember the saying, slow as molasses, because it slows everything down? We have one that weighs out while the other drops into the bag. So they alternate back and forth to speed up the line is really what we're trying to do. So once it drops down, this operates with robots, not dissimilar to what we did when I started here and we were still bagging by hand. So it will pick up a bag, it will place it on the funnel. When it knows that bag is in place, it will drop 50 pounds of feed down into that bag. After it has exactly 50 pounds in there, the bag is placed on a conveyor, and you'll watch the robot slide it to the side very quickly and then put it into a line where, depending on the product, it'll get a tag added and sewn shut. So we had a question come in. What is the need for different size feed pellets? Well, that's a great question. Some of this is about feeding the owners of the horses, and some of this is about feeding the horses. So as we get down the line, we're going to show you actually some feeds. We'll show you a textured product, the small pellet and the larger pellet. A lot of people think, oh, my young horses, they won't eat that larger pellet. Actually, foals learning how to eat will learn how to eat anything that mama eats. Kind of like growing up at home. Anything mom eats, baby's going to eat. But why would we have different sizes? Well, we make the small pellet to use inside our textured feeds. And we choose to use a very small pellet so that it's about the same size as an oat. It makes it difficult for the horse to separate the proteins, vitamins, and minerals in that small pellet from the yummy oats and corn and beet pulp and potentially other ingredients. So that's one reason to use the small pellet. The nice part of using the larger pellet, pellets in general don't freeze up in the wintertime. If you've ever had to scoop textured feed, if you've left it in a tack room without heat in the winter, it gets hard. But pellets don't do that, so they won't freeze up in the winter. They don't draw the rodents, they don't draw the bugs nearly as bad. If horses drop them, they can pick them up without getting dirt, rocks, gravel, bedding in their mouth, so there's less waste. They're also more efficient than a textured feed. We've already ground those ingredients some, and so therefore it is a more efficient product to feed to the horses. And then some of it is, does the owner rather want to see a small pellet or a larger pellet or a textured feed? We can make the exact same feed in a textured version, a small pellet, or a large pellet. So some of it's feeding owners, some of it's feeding horses, and that's where we need to have a conversation to figure out exactly the right feed for your horse. Do you have another one, Jared?
Yeah, Aaron's son Rowan would like to know if the robots have any names.
Well, the robots do have names. If you can see the two big blue robots down here, if you know anything about hallway feeds, you know that the founders were Mr. Bob and Miss Bonnie Hall. Mr. Bob still comes to work every day after he gets his work done on the farm, because you definitely get your chores done before you go to town, children. You need to listen. Now, Miss Bonnie passed away about 2 years ago this August. We thought maybe we'd call them Bob and Bonnie, but Jeff said, I don't know. If we call them Bob and Bonnie, what happens if they break down one day? I don't want to be out here upset at Bob and Bonnie. It just wouldn't feel right. So Julia said, all right, how about we go with Bonnie and Claude? So that felt appropriate that we have the Claude machine over there. So we got Bonnie and Claude. And we're still searching for the best name. Depending on the audience, we can talk about the robot that has small hands. But if you got any good suggestions, we'll take those as well. So we're in a break. They're actually switching feeds right now. So hopefully they'll come back. That's what happens when you do a live tour. Things happen. If you're on a farm, the horses might not come see you. When we're here live action showing you the production facility, they're switching out feeds. But I was explaining how we did it before we had the robots. So you'd have a stack of bags, and if you ever saw a feed bag had a little half moon cut out of the end of it, that was actually a thumb grip for picking the bag up with one hand and putting it on the funnel. So we used to have a foot pedal that would then close on the bag and hold it up while the feed dropped into it. When the feed dropped, after the 50 pounds dropped, it would drop on a conveyor. You would reach up, pull the top tight, and start it in the sewing machine. And when it started in the sewing machine, you'd reach up, grab a tag, and run it through it. And then we had, depending on the line and how quick we were moving, either one or two people that would stack the feed either on mini pallets or the large wooden pallets. So it's very similar to what we did, except that we don't need people in there actually doing those pieces. So this is Ron, and like I said, we're in between products. So you see he's switching out where we used to have pre-printed tags, and we had this huge inventory of tags all the time. Now we have a printer on the line. So we changed from a feed that had a pink tag, and now we're going to one that has a blue tag. Makes me think that maybe we could do a gender reveal in here one day. You had to wait and see the feed come out on the end of the line, whether it had a pink tag or a blue tag. We'll have to work on that down the road. Help somebody with a gender reveal, guys.
Taking reservations.
Yeah, email me if you'd like to set up a surprise at the end of the line down here. We can do it. Maybe we should do it for farms. Is it a colt or a filly? And we'll see what comes out on the end. So he's switching out the tags right now. Gonna have to switch out some bags, some note taking, and we'll get back to actually watching the feed being made. A lot of questions we get when we're giving these tours is, oh my gosh, completely automated in the production office, completely automated in the bagging, completely automated in the stacking. Did you all lose jobs? As we have automated, we have not lost any jobs. Our business has grown. We've continued to add people. We've made lives better. So people that used to have to stack feed all day, they now get to drive forklifts instead of stacking feed. Guys that were hanging bags, that rhythmic motion over and over and over again, now they get to operate laptops. And I tell everybody, our maintenance team used to carry a hammer and a grease gun. Now they carry a hammer, a grease gun, and a laptop. You know, they're able to plug in and diagnose things differently. So automation has changed our workforce. Definitely a more educated workforce, a superior workforce in their lives, and what they are doing is better for them. So very happy to say, no, we've not lost any. We've added jobs. Some of those are sales, some of those are support in here, and it's been a good thing. Good thing for everybody. Less wear and tear on the body, which is always a good thing. So we might have to come back this way in a minute, see how long it takes for him to finish switching over and get everything ready. But I'll point out as we come through, you see the blue paper, which will be the tag that actually prints on the line, and there's two spools of thread next to it. Well, we're actually sewing the bottom of the bag shut, and so as it comes through that next piece of equipment, there's a cutter in there that cuts the top of the bag off so that it's even, and then there's a big spool of white paper. It will fold that paper down over the top and sew through it so that it's a completely clean edge. There's no beet pulp or oats or corn, or there's no ingredients that are laying open to be contaminated or draw bugs or insects or cause trouble in an international port when they go to inspect a load. It's a very clean system now. So after it is sewn shut, it will continue up the conveyor, and there's actually two conveyors, one on top of the other. Why do you need two conveyors, one on top of the other? Well, it actually flattens it. So you'll notice when he starts back up here in just a minute, all the feed drops into the bottom, which is technically the top of the bag, and then it falls over on this next conveyor. Well, if you just tried to stack it like that, it would be a very lopsided brick, if you will. So when it gets to that conveyor, it actually evens it out so the feed is evenly distributed through the whole bag. So it's a nice rectangular block for Bonnie or Claude to pick up and stack onto a pallet. So he's just getting the first bags off. Now these always get pulled, they're going to get inspected. Is the moisture level right? Is it the right oil? Is it the right molasses? So the first bags will get pulled and inspected before we actually allow them through the line. You want to get a little closer and see it happen? So one thing you might notice is, hey, that's not a Hallway Feeds bag. Again, this is a live tour. This is what we are bagging. This is feed, horse feed. We only make horse feed. This is horse feed that's being made for a co-op in Virginia. They have their own feed mill, but they realized that to protect the horse, to protect the end users, that they could not make horse feed in a plant where they made feed for other species. And that's when they approached us, and we started working with them to make all of their horse feeds. So all this, if you're over in Virginia, you are watching your horse feed get made live on Hallway Feeds Facebook. Proud to show it to you. So it's dropping into the bag, and you can see the robot grab the sides, slide it over, where it's going to be held tight at the top, where they put the tag on it, fold the paper over, and sew it shut. Now this robot right here, he threw a temper tantrum when he was first installed. So he would actually grab that bag. Obviously we weren't running at these speeds. He would grab the bag, and instead of going over nice and even, he would literally throw it down to the side. I always say it's like telling a 3-year-old to pick up his toys. They would never break eye contact with you. They might pick the toy up and throw it over their shoulder, something like that, you know, just completely disrespectful. So it was pretty neat to watch it actually get fixed. They plugged the laptop in, tapped a few keys, tapped a few more, said try that, and he's been a pleasure to work with ever since. So the feed slides to the side. You can see the tag, paper get pulled through. Right when he goes to the next bag, there it moved on through, just as the bag gets there. And then from there, the top is cut off so it's nice and level. The paper's folded over the top, and then you can watch the string unwind as it sews. When the next bag comes through. So the bag gets pushed over, turned to go up the conveyors, and then you can see it gets nice and level. So if everything goes really well, our guys on the production line will replace bags. They'll tell the computer what they're making, particular molasses levels, things like that. But hopefully they have very quiet days. That's the plan. Our guys that assist will keep it loaded with pallets. And then as we walk around, I'll show you that we have a cardboard layer that covers the pallet to make sure the bags don't get torn. So we keep cardboard to go on top of the pallet, and you can see there's a pallet already loaded in, and we'll wait to watch it move here in a minute. And that just makes sure that there isn't a piece of wood, maybe not a nail, anything like that, that'll tear a bag accidentally. Do you have another question, Jared?
Pat asked, do you ship internationally and to what country?
Oh, we do, Pat. And we'll talk about that when it gets back here where it's a little bit quieter. We'll talk about some of the distribution. I just love to show the robots while we're in here and then go back where it's a little quieter to talk about where we're shipping it to. So this needs to put one more layer on. So it's really neat to watch our robot here. So it has 2 more bags on this layer. Just going to grab this one and place it. Now when it grabs this next bag, the robot's going to pause for just a moment. So what it's doing is it actually took a measurement of the height of the pallet. So different feeds are different densities. Depending on how much grain is in it or how much fiber, it'll either be really fluffy or really dense. And instead of having a different program for the robot for every batch of feed or every type of feed, there's a little camera up above that just measures the height in between every single layer. So just now, as it put a new pallet in, it measured and said, oh, we're 4 foot lower than we were just a minute ago. So the robot knew exactly where to drop the bag of feed. So watch again, it has 2 more bags to drop. After it drops this next one, so we finished a layer, it's going to grab a bag, it's going to pause, takes the measurement, and then places the bag. So we had a question come up on Facebook. It said, is the mill always this clean? Yeah, it really is. We have a gentleman here whose full-time job is to take care of it and make it look like this. And he takes great pride in it. We love Chris. Chris does great work. Now, it's a team effort. If you see a mess, you clean it up. But Chris's job is to keep it looking like this. He's not there to help me. He's not there to help Cory or any of the production. His job is to make sure the mill looks like this. We want to be company ready all the time. Mr. Bob always says an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. In fact, Jared, I'm going to have you come tell the Mr. Bob story. So tell about Mr. Bob and maybe there was a hidden penny.
Oh yeah. When I first started many moons ago, Mr. Bob used to throw pennies on the floor in the evenings and make sure they were gone and swept up the next day when the penny layer on the floor. You gotta get that. He
wouldn't tell you why. He'd just say, there's a penny over there. Yeah, so it's a top down. If you see Lee, our vice president, Jeff, our general manager, any of us walking through here, you're going to stop and clean something up if you see a mess. But we take great pride in keeping it this way all the time. So Mirko asked, do the robots break down often? No. They don't. These are very impressive, amazing machines. I think it's 3 years before their first scheduled maintenance is even due. They are a wonder to behold. Now, I don't know what it sounds like exactly, probably catching a lot of noise, but that's actually not from the bagging and palletizing. This is almost completely silent. The only noise you really hear in the mill is from the pellet mill. So those pellets, if you fed them, you know they're kind of hard, they're hitting metal, they make a lot of noise. But in the afternoon when they're done mixing feed and the pelletizers shut off, all of this runs almost completely silently, and it's really neat to be out here and watch it happen. Love the robots. We can rely on them. Well, and let me tell you about a change. I'll have been here 18 years this fall, and as I said, we were bagging feed by hand when I started. But Mr. Bob had basically a rule. If we made over 100 tons of feed in a day, he bought lunch for everybody the next day. That was a big deal to get that. Well, when we installed our first automated equipment after I started, the precursor to these robots, those bets were off. The days of 100 tons and free lunch were gone, because then we were making 125. Big days might have been 150 tons. Those were big days. Now, with all the automation systems we put in, from receiving to batching to actually bagging, palletizing, our biggest day to date's been 254. So we had a new one since the last time I checked, 254 tons. Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The beauty of a family-owned business. Now, there are big companies that make a whole lot more feed than we do. Good for them. We're about crafting this, kind of like the bourbon industry here in Kentucky. We're about the small batch, being very consistent, but being true to the product, true to the horse people, and doing it right for those professionals that need to count on an absolutely consistent product, safe, consistent product. So people might make more, they don't make it this good. Here's some of our, there's Harold, our first viral marketing. This came from Mr. Bob. What you got there?
110 minutes.
Okay. So this came from Mr. Bob. If you notice the truck, that door is actually closed. All right? So he comes into my office one day and he says, I know what we're going to do to the trucks from now on. I said, well, what's that, Mr. Bob? He says, when they get loaded today, close the door halfway, go and get a of them. I said, great, let's do it. And so now that's on the back of all of our trucks anymore. Reminds me of a story of a baker up in Ohio. I want to say it was Klosterman's. In their first delivery truck, they actually painted one side red and one side blue, so that as it went up and down the street, people thought they had multiples. Jared was nice. He laid out some seeds for us. All right, this is it. The feed of champions right here. This is race 13. Hallway Feeds has fed 13 Kentucky Derby winners. 12 of them ran on this product right here. One of them was on another product very similar to our Prep 14. So that's it. And let me show you what's inside there. It's good and sticky. So we've got oats. There you go. You've got beet pulp. We've got corn. And you've got the protein, vitamin, and mineral pellet right there. And now that moisture that you see on the hands, that's a combination of soy oil and the molasses. So when you think about it, kind of simple, but there's a lot of magic right there. Remember we talked about the size of the pellet? Well, we tried to make it the same size as an oat particle. Who wants to eat their proteins, vitamins, and minerals? They're not as tasty as the oats and the corn. So we try and make it so they can't sort it out. So then we have a pelleted feed, Equability, more of a sport horse type mix, but that's for horses you're out riding. We don't need the absolute high energy of race 13. A good one to keep the body condition up, but you see the small pellet and it still has everything they need. And then our larger pellet, that's a 1/2 inch cube. Absolutely love that one for all the farms here in central Kentucky. A brief primer there. All right, so we're going to make our way back through the mill here a little bit, and I'm going to get to your question about where the feed goes. I don't know if you can show the banners that we put up, but we love celebrating the successes of our customers. And so what we have up are all the Derby winners that we have fed, Preakness, Belmont, Oaks winners, as well as Breeders' Cup Classic winners. Love sharing those. The facility that we're in right now was built in 1985. They actually made the first horse feed here, in February of 1986. So we had a question about where do we distribute to? Does it go international? Are we local? All of the above. So this is our back warehouse where we store everything. For me, this is a little nerve-wracking because it feels a little bit empty right now. We deliver, you saw our delivery truck, we deliver feed within about 50 miles of Lexington, 50 miles of where we sit. Well, that's great because there's about 580 horse farms within a half hour of where we are right now. That's why this is the horse capital of the world. When I get outside of New Circle Road, every gate you drive past is another horse farm. So it's pretty wonderful. So we deliver locally. We have 5 trucks that the drivers stack feed down onto black plastic mini pallets and they roll them in with a dolly into farms every day. We have 2 trucks that actually have a forklift on the back of them. So they handle large pallets of feed just like you see it stacked here. They handle whole pallets of feed, 1 ton at a time. So for larger farms that can handle multiple pallets of feed, they're able to roll in and drop off multiple pallets. Now, that's just central Kentucky. When we get into the rest of the country, the sport horse venues in Wellington or Tryon, North Carolina, or getting out on Long Island or around Chicago, California, the racing venues all over the U.S., we have dealers and distributors in all those locations. And so we will ship the feed out of here on semi-trucks to all those locations. You have another question there, Jared?
I've got 2, one from Michelin and one from Brenda.
Do the horses like the bigger cubes, and how do you keep rodents from getting into the bags? So again, I said earlier, some of what we do is about feeding the owners. And so which one do they want to see? Because we can make the exact same feed in any of those forms. The horses love the larger ones. In fact, we hear from farms all the time that it's harder to switch a horse from the larger pelleted feed, the cube, to a sweet feed, a textured feed, than the other way around. So our impression is that the horses actually prefer the pellets to the other ones. How do we keep rodents from getting into the bags? You keep it clean. You should keep your tack room, your feed rooms looking at least like this. Rotate the feed, don't ever let it sit in one place for too long, and keep it clean. So I was talking about the distribution. We have dealers and distributors in every major racing venue. We're growing in the sport horse business. We're getting in all the sport horse venues. We actually have a full-time salesperson down in Texas at this point, and the number of stores to support all of her work, a full-time salesperson down in Florida, and the distribution down there is fantastic through the whole state. So domestically, no, we don't have 1,500 feed stores across the country, but we're picking and choosing and going to the areas that we can service. And the great news is, for the people that have 1 or 2 horses anywhere in the country, Chewy.com. So you can get some of our products anywhere in the country on Chewy.com. And then internationally, depending on the strength of the dollar, depending on the economies of those countries, we ship to anywhere between 12 and 16 countries at any given time. And we have manufacturing partnerships in 5 countries. So we will ship completed products to Trinidad, to Japan, to the Middle East. But there's 5 countries where Made in USA isn't necessarily what they want to see. So they will actually manufacture the products locally using our Kentucky Colonel secret herbs and spices that we send them. So we'll send them the protein, vitamin, and mineral pack. Then they use their ingredients to build the rest of the feed around it. So those countries are the UK. We work very closely with Polly Bonner over at Saracen Horse Feeds over in the UK. We work with a company in Ireland, New Zealand, South Africa, and India as well. So when people say, how far do you ship? I'll usually joke and say halfway around the world, because if you were going any further, you should have gone the other way. We had a question come in. It said, how are you handling this? Essentially, just what are we doing? So some of the nature of our business is very separated anyhow. Our delivery drivers don't come into a lot of contact necessarily on a regular basis. Everybody is being more careful as far as that goes, though, as far as washing your hands, cleaning your hands, space, keeping the distance while we're doing a virtual tour instead of having you in today. So from the front end in like our office, we'll take calls. You never even have to come into the office. Pay for it over the phone. We'll load it in your car. No contact face-to-face, and seeing people and meeting people and talking about their horses. But this is the time where we don't do that, where we give space. We're going to catch up afterwards. We'll learn all about the horses and how they handled COVID-19 as well. Space, cleanliness. We're cleaning even more often in the office. All the surfaces are away, but at the end of every day for sure, and many times in between. Leaving that distance, not going to visit farms, not being out there in the middle of everything, giving a lot more space and distance and cleaning. Not keeping in touch with the governor's saying social distancing, do it together, give the space, and so we're honoring all those things. That being said, we're still making horse feed. We're still delivering horse feed. Nothing has to be hoarded. We're not going to run out of horse feed. The ingredients keep coming. So buy the feed just like you would any other day. We've about made it through the mill. Obviously, we have our warehouse, wonderful shrink wrappers. It keeps us from getting very dizzy. Always a favorite if you bring young children on the tour with you. They love the shrink wrapper, and I think older children enjoy it as well. I'm a big fan of it. You can see some of our newest products over here. Distinguished, a senior feed. I wasn't sure if my feelings should have been hurt or I should have been honored when we were picking out the silver for the bag, and Morgan tried to match it against the gray in my beard. I think since it's distinguished, I'll take that as an honor that we tried to match it to my beard. I appreciate that. And then if our cable reaches, we're just going to make one more glance out the back door. So if you got any questions, we're starting to wrap things up here. Get them in now. Here's Willie. Be careful, Willie. So here's one of our trucks that actually has the forklift on the back. He's making his second delivery of the day. So, well, we've reached the end of our cord. So he's going out to make at least his second delivery of the day. That's the nice part about those pallet trucks. So our box trucks will deliver 10 to 12 tons each per day. Well, those great big trucks with the forklifts on the back can actually handle up to almost 40 tons per day. And a lot less wear and tear on our drivers. I was just going to show you out here, this is where we load the semis or any containers that go overseas. They're done back here at these dock plates before they head to the scale and final weigh out, information gathering, paperwork's filled out and sent to wherever they need to go. We have a chamber back here for all of our international shipments, keep them completely separated from anything else until they are ready to go on the ocean-going containers. And then down below we have storage, pallets, bags, salt blocks, just all the things you have to keep on hand when you are a feed mill. Jared, did you have any more Facebook questions? No. So we're going to make our way right back up to the front. You've seen most of it. I promise you, you've not seen it all. Don't think this is your opportunity to not take an actual tour with us here at Hallway Feeds. Because like Julia said the other day, you didn't get to smell the granola, you didn't get to taste the granola, you didn't get your hands down into the horse feed, so you don't know what it smells like. Depending on who you are and who you come with, maybe there's other pieces. We can, at small groups, we can take you into the pellet mill and show you how they operate. You've not seen it all just because you watched this tour today. There's lots more to see. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to make our way back up towards the front here. We're going to try and stay out of Will's way. He's a hard worker. Will's the one that makes sure every one of these pallets is perfectly lined up It's a thing of beauty when Will does his job right. We really like that. So from the whole team here at Hallway Feeds, thanks for watching today. I might have gotten a little long-winded, but thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can still email us. If you want Cory to look into a different shape, you know, the rainbows, the horseshoes, the stars, send us an email. We'll see if we can get a petition going to get something interesting there. Thanks for joining us today. Hallwayfeeds.com, info@hallwayfeeds.com if you got any questions, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Cut.